ተመልካቾቻችን እንደምን ሰንብታችኋል? እንግዲህ በአሁኑ ሳምንት እንዳለፈው ሳምንት ባለፈው ኦገስት 18 ላይ በዚህ በዋሽንግተን ዲሲ Empower the Community Weekend ብሎ በተዘጋጀው ፕሮግራም ላይ ቀርቦ ከነበሩት ፓነል ዲስከሽኖች አንደኛው ነው። ዛሬም ደግሞ የምንጋብዛችሁ ይሄ ፓነል ዲስከሽን ያተኮረው በቢዝነስ ሊደርስ ስፒክ የሚል አርዕስት ላይ ነውና የጋበዝንላችሁ እንግዳ በዚህ ላይ መጀመሪያ ኢትዮጵያ ኃይለማርያም፣ ማይክል አንደብርሃንና ሉሊት እጅጉ ናቸው። እነዚህ በአሜሪካን ሀገር ውስጥ በኮርፖሬት ካምፓኒዎች ውስጥ የተለያየ ቦታ ላይ በሊደርሺፕ በስራ ላይ የተሰማሩ ናቸውና እነሱ ከልምዳቸው እንዴት እኛ ኢትዮጵያውያኖች ከሚድል ማኔጅመንት አልፈን እንዴት ሲኒየር ሊደርሺፕ ውስጥ መግባት እንችላለን፣ እዛ ላይ ለመግባት ምን ነገሮች ማድረግ ይኖርብናል የሚሉትን ሐሳቦች እያነሱ ቆይታ ያደርጋሉ። እንግዲህ እንድትከታተሉ ጋብዛችኋለሁ።
This is going to be a very inspiring panel discussion with people that are again on the top of their game doing amazing work in various sectors. We're going to have our very own Helen who's going to be moderating this session of business leaders. We have 3 amazing guests for you, but before I would like to get our moderator to the stage. So please help me in welcoming the moderator for this business leaders panel. Please welcome Helen to the stage, who's coordinating this amazing Empower the Community Weekend. We're going to invite next to the stage Ms. Ethiopia Hautamariam, who's the president of Motown Records and president of Urban Music co-head of Creative at Universal Publishing Music Group. So please welcome Ms. Ethiopia Hautamariam to the stage. Following Ms. Ethiopia,
we have Mikhail Andebrhan, CFA, CAIA Executive Director and Head of Investment Consultant Coverage at MSCI. So please welcome Mikhail Andebrhan to the stage.
Hey.
And finally, we have Lulit Ejigu, Executive Director in Risk Management at JP Morgan Chase. So please welcome our distinguished guests here, leaders in business, who will be discussing a little bit about themselves, their journeys, and inspire us with their wonderful success stories, and I'm sure the triumphs and tribulations that they've overcome. I give it up to you, Helen. Please enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. We're so glad that you all are here. As you can see, we have an esteemed panel of expertise here. I'm thrilled that Ethiopia is able to join us all the way from LA. Michael from New York, Lulit from Dallas. So thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. The topic of this conversation is strategies for breaking through the glass ceiling with successful Ethiopian and Eritrean Americans. So many of us who live in this country, especially most of us that are in the professional space or those of us who are aspiring to get into the professional space, I feel, as strong as our numbers are, I mean, just even when you think about it, in the Washington, D.C. area, we're over 350,000 Ethiopian Americans, right? I don't feel like we're represented in leadership roles in the corporate space as much as we should, or even if there are, we're not networking, we're not connecting with each other, so we can all grow together. So this conversation is really, the purpose is really for us to really have a dialogue to see why are we really not advancing? What do we need to do to break through the glass ceiling as immigrants? So that's what this conversation is about. So thank you so much for coming. So I guess to get to know you a little bit before we kick off before we dive into the meat of our conversation, I'd like to ask if you could just give us a little bit of a background about how you got started in the industry that you're in, your journey, how you got to where you are. So I'm going to start with you, Ethiopia, and just take us from there.
Okay. So I was raised in Atlanta, Georgia, which has a large music community, and I had a love and passion for music when I was really young. And I got introduced to a record label that existed in Atlanta called LaFace Records. There was a woman that came and spoke in my high school my freshman year, and I asked her if I could shadow her. So I had an internship at LaFace Records. I went on to, do events, talent shows, whatever. I started putting things together. And long story short, I got introduced to a career in music publishing by, someone that worked at LaFace and Hicko Music Publishing that's ran by L.A. Reid. She told me I'd be a great music publisher, and I interviewed for a job in L.A. at Baby Faces Publishing Company at the time. I had just turned 21, and I ended up getting some work for some of the producers signed to the company. It got me recognition with some of the bigger publishing companies, and that's how I got to Universal Publishing. And over time, I just moved up the ranks from signing talent pretty early on, whether it was like Chris Brown or Justin Bieber or J. Cole or artists like that. And as a music publisher, you work with them as songwriters. You help them in the process of finding people to collaborate with, to create their music, etc. And I got introduced to A&R when I signed Sierra early on as a songwriter, and I A&R'd her record. And as I gained success and had really delivered for the company on the publishing side, I was recognized by the corporate company, and they asked me if I wanted to step into a role at a label, which was about 5.5 years ago. So I was in a dual role between Motown and the publishing company. We created a successful urban music department at the publishing company, and I started doing A&R for Motown and was promoted to the president of the company when we moved to Los Angeles about 4 years ago.
Great.
Yeah.
What a journey, huh?
Yeah.
I'm sure there were bumps in the road along the way.
Absolutely.
We'll
absolutely.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Michael, let me come to you. So tell us, how's your journey? You're in finance, a cutthroat industry that you both are in. Very competitive, highly competitive, especially in New York City. So tell us your journey, your career journey. Where did you start and how did you get to where you are right now?
Sure, and I guess let me just start off. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the group here.
Sure.
I grew up in Seattle and came from a big family like most of us, 5 siblings. And I took my first finance class as an undergraduate. I think like most of us, we really don't know what we want to do when we're in college, and you sort of take different classes and try to see what interests you. And finance at the time, learning about the stock market, which is a very dynamic, every day is different. It really interested me, and when I took my first class, I had an opportunity at around 21 to have a very short interview on CNBC as part of a class. And so being on live TV, it just really made passion of finance for me. And so just continued going through school, got my first job, and I found my first real mentor. And I think that's something that is really important, is finding someone that believes in you and your criteria and your career, and just latching onto it, learning from them, absorbing everything that you can, and then from there you just build on what you've done. And so moving to San Francisco and now New York, it gets more cutthroat, more competitive, but you also thrive at that. You become better when you're around people that are motivating you.
That's great. How about you, Lilith? How was your journey? Where'd you get started?
So I'm not like Michael at all. I didn't actually prepare to be in banking. I would say that I graduated like in the middle of the financial crisis, and so it was super, super hard to find a job. And wanted to be a lawyer. I started studying for the LSAT, and I'm not good with standardized tests. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should work for a little bit. And on top of that, many lawyers at that time were out of a job. It was very difficult to find a job. And so I got a call from a friend who used to work at a staffing agency, and he's saying, and my degree was in psychology and communication studies, and they said so many customers are losing their homes, and they need someone to talk to that can empathize with them and not try to just collect money from them. So I started my career in collections. So I guess it was psychology, and I was broke and I needed a job, and I kind of just went from there.
Interesting. So, all three of you are in the corporate space, again, very competitive, and sometimes there may not be people that look like you around you that may be able to pull you up. So what are some of the common misconceptions people have about understanding the corporate culture? Again, when you get into an organization, half the battle is understanding the corporate culture in order for you to be able to move up or find the right mentors, the right people to help pull you up. So, just tell us a little bit about that. Some of the misconceptions people have about, understanding corporate culture and what it means to really know that. So maybe Ethiopia, if you can start with that.
Yeah, I'm in a creative industry, and for a large portion of my career, my success was defined by the results of working with the talent that I worked with. So it wasn't until honestly stepping into the president role and developing our, urban department at the publishing company that I was able to really see the difference, right? You went from being hands-on with artists and talent and creating, and then you're in the corporate culture and you're like, okay, this is a huge transition for me. But knowing how to navigate, being open, communication is a key part of how you can build your your partners within the division that you work in, and supporters, honestly. And I've always kind of operated with a team kind of mentality. I believe in building that trust with your team members and supporting everyone. So that's a key component as well. And as far as mentorship within an organization, if you don't find anyone that looks like you, it's okay, but find people that can understand what your gift is and what your talent is, and make an effort to set up monthly meetings, et cetera, where you can do a Q&A. And just taking that initiative is key in how you can find supporters within an organization. And that's been very helpful for me in my career.
For you?
Yeah.
And how about you, if you could add into that, talk about, Wall Street is very different. And again, it's super competitive. So how do you really navigate the corporate culture in order to be able to grow and get to where you currently are? And I'm sure you're aspiring to go to higher places, but tell us from where you are what that understanding corporate culture means.
Yeah, and I think maybe to add on to what Ethiopia said, finding a mentor early is very important. And, there's no doubt about it. Corporate America is very white and Asian, and so there's not many that look like us, but that doesn't mean to be a detractor. My mentor was, a white woman from suburban Washington, and she believed in me and kind of gave me opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think having that mentor is very important. And then once you get into corporate America, there's a lot of push for diversity. They want people like us in certain roles, and so those opportunities will be there, but they will not fall in your lap. You have to seek them out, and once you do, I think the opportunities are endless, but you have to seek them out. And part of, I think, the biggest lesson I've learned is to be greedy. I think a lot of my coworkers automatically ask for things, raises, promotions, and I think we're taught from immigrant standpoint to not ask for those things.
That's true.
But if we do, it really opens up a lot of opportunities. So just be a little greedy, and it really can make a difference.
I guess you can say that on Wall Street, be a little greedy. How about you, Lulit?
I would say that, when we say misconceptions, it's not just corporate cultures, it's really any culture in general. And I think that it's not necessarily misconceptions, really perspective. Gandhi says that a nation's culture lives in the heart and souls of its people. And so every single time you step into a boardroom, you step into a presentation, you're with a number of different colleagues at a conference like this, it's really being the change and being the culture carriers wherever you go. And so it's I've always had less education, less experience, the youngest in the room, the black woman, all of those tags that we have. And of course, when you're an immigrant and you come from an immigrant family, most of us see, the hard work. And so, and some of these cultures that we go into, it's more about talking and different things of that sort. But I think that we have to, as a community, just be more focused on being the change and culture that we want to see in the world, wherever we go.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። አሁን እየተከታተላችሁ ያላችሁት በኦገስት 18 በኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ዊኬንድ ላይ ተዘጋጅቶ የነበረውን ቢዝነስ ሊደርስ ስፒክ የሚለውን ፓነል ነው። በዚህ ፓነል ዲስከሽን ላይ ኢትዮጵያ ሀብተ ማርያም፣ ሉሊት እጅጉና ማይክል አንደብርሃን ናቸው ዲስከስ የሚያደርጉት እንዴት በኮርፖሬት ስትራክቸር ውስጥ እንዴት ማደግ እንደምንችል ወደ ሊደርሺፕ ወደ ሃየር ፖዚሽን ለመግባት ራሳችንን ለማሳደግ ምን ነገር ማድረግ አለብን የሚለውን ቆይታ እየቀጠልን ነው። ተከታተሉት።
Being an immigrant and some of the challenges, sometimes it's very difficult to access certain opportunities, to access the network and the resources most of the time because, Americans who are born and raised here, their fathers have been in that same, company, they know their friends, they're always that connection. Can we talk about, some of the systemic challenges that we have as immigrants, and how do you see from your standpoint how we can combat some of those things, and how can we approach our careers? And you can talk about it from your own experience, see how we can combat some of those challenges.
It's interesting because I never looked at being an immigrant, being a woman, black, whatever these, again, you said tags, right? I never looked at those things as being things that were challenges for me, and maybe other people would try and, put those tags on me, but I never looked at it that way. I was so focused on my passion and my purpose that I was more concerned about delivering. And I think as a community, it's really important that when we do get the opportunity to go after these opportunities, that we deliver on them, and then carry the responsibility of also bringing up others or mentoring others and also come in and deliver. That's how we really make change. I think it's by representing the change, as you kind of mentioned, and creating other opportunities for our people.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you? Any challenges as an immigrant that you think that we carry with us? And if you had them, how did you overcome them?
I think it's just around, asking for certain things. I think my peers, my colleagues, they do things and they ask for things that historically I wouldn't have asked for. But as I've seen those opportunities, it's really the ones that really ask for them that really receive them. And so, seeking out mentorships, seeking out a network. I mean, I've tried to build a big network just within finance, and honestly, the more further along you get in your career, there's no more Monster, there's no more of these job searches. Really, jobs come to you, and it's really through your network and the people you know. So I think just building that network, holding on to it and building good mentorships, and that's something that's important to me, serving as a mentor, because when I was growing up, I didn't have anyone that looked like me to be a mentor, and so I seek out those opportunities because it's things that I didn't have, and as a community, the more we do that, the more opportunities we build for ourselves.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a little personal. And I wanna ask a question because failure is always part of the process, right? So tell me about something that you felt like maybe this was my biggest failure, and some of the lessons that you learned and how that failure contributed to your success today. So I'm gonna start with you, Lunit.
That's really hard for me because I think that overall, I don't really look at things as failures, because I look at them as like hurdles that basically strengthen you. And so I've sent the wrong email, I've responded in emotion, and as women we can be very emotional sometimes, and I've typed up that email really quick, and then I said, okay, after an hour I was like, ooh, that's probably the wrong thing to say. But I think that really just asking for grace, right, and saying, you know what, calling it out, being humble, and really understanding that, sending the wrong email, missing a deadline, just different things that we do, or not being as prepared, right? We're just human, and I think that basically learning how to really forgive yourself, and then nothing really becomes a failure, because it's like, even in the financial crisis, and I'm sure Michael knows, like there was so many things going on every single day, and it's like before you know it, there's another perspective that will really come to mind. It's, okay, the other person on the other side of this is actually losing their home. So what can I do? Like, I don't have time to sit in failure or mistakes. It's really using those mistakes and kind of, creating that tenacity that allows us to really overcome and do better and better and better. And that's, I think, how we grow. It's like growing pains versus in failures.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so any failure you want to talk about, anything that you've went through that you said, okay, I learned from this and it contributed to my success?
Yeah, no, I think Lily hit it right on the head. Every single one of these failures is an opportunity to grow. So the mistake is, if you make a mistake, don't learn from it and make it again, then that's not really growth. But when I was first getting into consulting, and it was right in the midst of the financial crisis, I did my first client meeting. This was a fund that lost 20% of its value, and they were asking some very difficult questions that I frankly didn't know the answer to. And so I remember bullets of sweat on my forehead. And that was I can't control the market, so the money is gone, but really helping them, educate them on what happened, what we can learn from it, and how to position it going forward. I think that's one failure, but I was able to overcome it and certainly learn from it.
How'd you overcome it? What'd you do?
I did my homework.
Okay.
So there's certain questions that you just won't know the answer to. And what a tough lesson I learned was, it's okay to say I don't know, but I'll follow up, I'll get to you. Versus trying to answer something on the fly, you're just going to create more trouble than it's worth. And then other challenges, I took a few certification exams that I finally passed, but it took a number of different attempts. And so those were big failures, because it was 6 months of time basically that I can't get back, but I was able to get through that and finish it up. So just looking at every opportunity to grow from it and learn from it, and I think that's really what leads to success.
Don't give up is what you're saying.
Don't give up, yes.
Okay. How about you, Ethiopia?
Yeah, that's the key factor. To to counter what she said, that's the truth. I don't look at any of the challenges I've experienced as failures. I've done a lot of work to be very self-aware, and I look at all of it as like, this is my opportunity to grow and to not make the same mistakes, et cetera. So my transition from being a creative, where it was all about putting together the art of music through talent, and then being in a more corporate environment and having the responsibility of managing the P&L for a company, staffing up for the label, et cetera. There aren't, many women in roles of president of a record label, let alone like women of color. And there was a lot that changed for me during, I call it those years like the dark years, but those are my years of absolute growth. And it would not have allowed me to get to a place of being able to handle that responsibility had I not gone through that. And that's just my perspective on it. But I'm thankful for it because it made me stronger. It made me more resilient. And how I got through it was focusing on delivering, focusing on having the success, because no one can combat when you're doing the work to deliver for the company, and then, realizing what my mistakes were along the way and then growing from that.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people email me, on the show whenever we bring in somebody successful, and they talk their journey, and they talk about how they got to where they gotten. But sometimes people miss the journey. The journey has to be there. You can't just get from point A to point B. There's a process for everything, and sometimes we really don't want to either pay the price of that, or we just assume, okay, if I'm not making it, then there must be something wrong with me. But there isn't really something wrong with you. It's just your journey and your process is different. For some people, it might be a year, 2 years. For you, it might be 10 years. But that doesn't mean you're not going to get there.
It's only over when you give up.
Exactly.
It's only over when you give
up.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me someone that has been a mentor to you, someone that has had a tremendous impact in your life, and who is that person, and their contribution in your life. How do you see that person? Or how did you even find that mentor?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that I've been extremely blessed along the way. I mean, my parents have been very active in my life and continue to be. Meeting that woman in high school that introduced me to a career in music, I'm forever thankful to her. This woman's name was Shanti Das, and the woman who introduced me to a career in publishing, she saw a gift in me. I had never worked in publishing, but she was like, you have the skill set to do this. And her name was Rhonda Sutton. She gave me an amazing opportunity early on in my career. And over time, I've had, whether it was a man by the name of Clarence Avant, who's known as like the godfather of the music business. He worked with everyone from Quincy Jones. He had a label called Sussex Records. He's 80 plus years old, but I've had a long relationship with him for over 10 years now. But who he was in my life was someone that would just share stories about things that happened that allowed me to deal with situations that were happening in real time in my career. And it gave me the strength to really push forward. And so I'm thankful for those people in my life. And then I have just incredible friends that may have been in the business before, took me under their wing, et cetera. And it was an exchange of value. They were teaching me things and I was delivering for them, whether they were a manager, et cetera. And so I've had several people throughout my life that have helped in building me up.
Okay. And Michael, you may have mentioned earlier a lady that was a mentor to you. Any other mentors that you've had, and how did you seek them out?
Yeah, so she was probably my primary mentor. My current job, that mentor I had also was another white woman. I think I just have a lot of white women as mentors, but she helped promote me. She moved me to New York. She gave me responsibilities, and so part of it was just asking. But I think probably my biggest mentor is, the family. I grew up with a big family, and immigrants. The parents growing up. There's a lot of challenges of being immigrants, and one of them was just making sure that bad influences didn't seep into the household. And so, growing up, we had a lot of kids that weren't doing as well as our family, and my father was very perceptious that he wanted to be the exception. And so he would go to the library with me to make sure I was studying. Just doing that extra step to make sure that I didn't fall into the trap of peer pressure. And so I think that was one thing that sort of led me to at least be on the right track.
That's great. Really, who was your mentor, and how did you seek that mentor out, or did they find you? How did it work?
I think that I'm very blessed. I think, like Ethiopia and Michael here, just, having parents, aunts, sisters, brothers, friends, that have always, I think, continued to be great mentors. So I didn't really even know I needed to seek out other mentors. until I met a guy at work, and his name is Mark. He still mentors me to this day, and I think that I didn't know I needed it until I'm in front of him. He helped me navigate, and he's a white male, so very different than obviously our background, and just being able to give me a different perspective of here's how you handle the situation, here's how you create executive presence, and all these other things that I didn't really know of. But I think that my dad is very hardworking, so great mentor for me as far as just learning how you can kind of keep accomplishing more if you just work hard, right, and be diligent. And then I think I was a big firecracker, I think my whole life, and my mom is much more silent. She has that silent strength, and so I've kind of learned to be more poised as I've gotten older and be careful with my words and just be really intentional with them.
Okay, so your mentors are people that are close to you. Sometimes we kind of, the perception is we have to have a mentor that is either a CEO or a mentor that is in a much higher position, but it's not really. Right. Your mentors are different people that are around.
Sometimes they're your friends.
Exactly.
That are in your life constantly. The general manager of our company is here right now, and he is someone that I learn from constantly. I think we learn from each other, and I'm thankful for that. Also, my father was really supportive in my life early on, and I mean, to say I'm going to go out of high school and take a career in the music business is not typical for Abasha parents to understand. And they were like, what are you doing? Did
they question you? Like, what are you
100%. My mom to this day still asks me, so when are you going back to school? I'm like, Mommy, I think I did all right. Don't you love the house? Right, Yeah. But my father early on was making sure I had every resource needed in order to deliver for the job. I was living in my parents' bedroom, living in my bedroom at my parents' house, and he was like, all right, I'm gonna get you a new computer. This is when I was coming out of high school, a fax machine, your cell phone, whatever. And I was like, thank you. He's been that encouraging person in my life.
How do you motivate yourself? And I'm just gonna start with you again, Ethiopia, because sometimes you get into a certain position, I am now the president of the company, I have arrived. Do you sit in that laurel and you just hang, or how do you motivate yourself?
I don't know if any of us ever feel like we've arrived. You know what I mean?
True.
You can never just rest on your laurels. I really believe I'm living my purpose. I love music. Music was what connected me to everyone and made me feel like I wasn't different when I was a young kid. I was growing up in Atlanta in the South when there weren't many of us there. And I would write lyrics down or whatever. So I believe that I'm living my purpose out when I get to work with the level of talent that I get to work with. And so I'm just really focused on delivering for them. Of course, I benefit from it, but I never set out to be the president of the company or the CEO of the company. I'm thankful that I've gotten to this position because I know that my intention is to do the right thing for the talent. I believe that music is a God-given gift, and that's why I'm here to support and support the talent, people that are blessed with the gift.
That's great.
Yeah.
Michael, how do you motivate yourself?
Yeah, I think the grind never stops. I think every level you get to, there's a new goal that's above that. So,
that's true.
And then I think surrounding yourself with very motivated people. I mean, I live in New York, and I know very successful bankers, lawyers, accountants, and everyone's doing well. And so that, I think, in of itself motivates you. And then I think further on down the line, if I can help either mentor or hire or do something for another person of color, another Habesha person, then if they can achieve those results, then I think that would be kind of a measure of success as well.
That's great. How do you motivate yourself, Lily?
Sometimes I talk to myself. Sometimes especially before I came here, I said, okay, Lily, you got this. You can do this, right? And I think that there'll always be moments in our life, and really daily sometimes, where I've had a number of different places or times in my life. I think that I was going through a season where every day just felt really hard. And I think that in that time, you really need people around you. Center yourself around individuals that will pull you, will encourage you, will push you. Even if they don't know how or they haven't been there before, they say, I got you, I believe in you. And so I think that, really growing up and realizing that you needed to bring people around you that were going to kind of push you, motivate you when you couldn't motivate yourself, I think was a big thing, and I continue to do that.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። አሁን እየተከታተላችሁ ያላችሁት በኦገስት 18 በኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ዊኬንድ ላይ ተዘጋጅቶ የነበረውን ቢዝነስ ሊደር ስፒክ የሚለውን ፓነል ነው። በዚህ ፓነል ዲስከሽን ላይ ኢትዮጵያ ሀብተ ማርያም፣ ሉሊት እጅጉና ማይክል አንደብርሃን ናቸው ዲስከስ የሚያደርጉት እንዴት በኮርፖሬት ስትራክቸር ውስጥ እንዴት ማደግ እንደምንችል ወደ ሊደርሺፕ ወደ ሃየር ፖዚሽን ለመግባት ራሳችንን ለማሳደግ ምን ነገር ማድረግ አለብን የሚለውን ቆይታ እየቀጠልን ነው። ተከታተሉት።
I want to talk about being authentic, okay? So I know when I started in the industry that I'm in, I quote-unquote, I say my day job, I'm in marketing and business development, and the environment that I'm in, especially not now, but in the early when I started out, I wanted to be like somebody else. Okay, like I saw somebody's character, I saw somebody's way of doing business, I wanted to be like them, and I would 100% try to emulate what they do. But what I found is success is when you're authentic, when it's who you are. You present yourself just the way you are, not trying to be something else, not trying to be somebody else. Let's talk about being authentic. What does that mean to you? It's a hard one, huh?
Well, yeah, because it's not compromising who you are because of the environment you're in or the culture that you're around. You have to make that decision for yourself, and being comfortable with maybe not looking like the other people that you're around or acting in the same way that they do. Even if you see someone who's really successful, I've seen people who are global chairmen that have been the most hideous people on a human level. And I was like, I don't want to be anything like them. I have to be myself. I come from parents who are incredibly kind, hardworking people, and I made that promise to myself early on. It's who I am. I'm emotional at times. I'm passionate. I can't be any other way, and so I'm thankful that although I may be very different than a lot of people that I'm around, that's actually been a thing that's attracted people to me as well. You know what I mean? Like talent. I'm able to get deals and people that want to be with me or want to work with me because they feel the authenticity. They know there's a genuine nature that's there. So I couldn't have it any other way, and I thank God for that. That I wasn't in a compromising situation where I did try to change who I was.
Who you are. Yeah. What does being authentic mean to you?
I think I've become more authentic later on in my career. I think growing up, and so I think one of the other panelists said earlier, people don't see Eritrea and Ethiopia, and they see black skin. So there's that perception that your authentication is not anything other than being black. And so the further on in my career, I've become more proud of being Eritrean. And not that I wasn't proud, but now I'd let anyone know that I don't know that where I'm from. And I think representation really matters. There's a moderator earlier, Hannah, she's sitting right here. She wore traditional dress and traditional braids on TV as a reporter, and that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. And I think we're becoming,
really cool.
And that was pretty cool.
When I saw it, I actually, sent it out to friends. I'm like, how cool is she? She's just being herself, right?
To be herself, and
right.
I think just having that authenticity of representing where you're from, and not caring who or what cares about that, really leads us to give a better name for our countries. Tiffany Haddish wearing her traditional dress at the Oscars. I mean, those little things really help put us on the map.
Right.
And so I think us being authentic really helps, lift the perception of these East African countries.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think being authentic is really just, I guess, you can't be authentic if you don't love who you are. And so I think that, I think we brought it up even in the women panel earlier, we just haven't been comfortable being who we are. And I think that when you go into different rooms and you feel like, oh, this is the same person, they're all thinking and talking the same. And I think you'll realize that what makes you different, what makes you you, actually also makes people excited to get to know you.
That's
and
true.
so I think that when I go into rooms and things of that sort, and that's why I'm wearing red today, right? It's like most people are like, that's really bright, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just being who you are. And I think that once you kind of just sit up straight, square your shoulders out, you kind of just start to feel comfortable in your own skin, and it just kind of pours out of you. It resonates with people. People want to feel like you're a normal person. And it's really hard to do that if you're being fake and kind of stiff. And so what I say is just be comfortable in your own skin, love yourself, because people can't love you if you don't love who you are. So I think that's what being authentic is, I think.
I want to ask this question. I've asked it earlier on one of my previous panels, which was Phenomenal Women Speak, and I talked about confidence, okay? And I think sometimes we as immigrants, just having to live here in this country where everybody's so different than us, having to acclimate ourselves in the culture, sometimes, especially as women, we really may not grow understanding being confident in who we are, or understanding that what we bring to the table is enough. And so how do you build yourself up? How do you build confidence in yourself to go out there and be who you are? What things do you do?
I grew to a place where I just fell in love with the different things about me that made me me. And that took a little time, honestly. You know what I mean? You grow up a certain way, and you're like, you have your different things that you would be, insecure about. And then I got to a place, and I'm thankful for it as a woman, where you're just like, okay, actually, I love everything about me. This may be weird, this may be a little different, but it's who I am.
I love it.
And people are attracted to that, so I'm thankful for that. I know, and I can look back on my life, not just my career, and be proud of who I am, who my friends are, who my family is, my family back home in Ethiopia, and I understand that I represent that. And so my confidence comes from that. Like, anytime I think about my parents, I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful that I got to be their daughter. You know what I mean? Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. How do you build confidence? Again, your industry is a very cutthroat, very hard, tough industry, and everybody walks around like they own the world. How do you build that? Am I right? I mean, that's how it is in corporate, right? In Wall Street. At least that's what they show us on movies.
It's not like
that?
It's not like the Wolf of Wall Street.
No, okay, got it. Okay, all right.
No, I think putting yourself in very uncomfortable situations, I think, is part of it. I seek out challenges that are beyond like my normal day-to-day, because if I fail, then that's a lesson learned, and I can just elevate it beyond that. And so putting yourself, taking chances is a really big part of it. I mean, my first boss, her first piece of advice to me was, I'd rather have you beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. And what that told me was, if I have an idea, I mean, unless it's crazy, just run with it and see where it goes. And if I fail, move on. So I think that's one of the early lessons, is just take chances, and you never know. I mean, you can seek out opportunities that you otherwise would have never had.
I think it depends on what it is. So I think if I'm about to give a presentation, or I'm about to ask or propose something, what gives me confidence is really just being prepared.
That's true.
Like saying, I'm prepared. If it's something like this today, I think I was talking to the judge earlier, and she's like, there's no need to worry, you've got this, right? So just that encouragement, sometimes a reminder that, you're here, so God brought you here, so you're supposed to be here, right? And sometimes we forget that. We're like, wait, why am I here? Why have I been chosen? And I think that just being able to know that you're here for a purpose, and you're living that out day by day, and just understanding that you can do as much to prepare, but then you have to give the rest to God and just kind of go from there.
That's right. And I agree with that 100%. Every single one of us have a purpose. I hope you all believe that, right? Regardless who you are, where you came from, what you do, we all have God-given purpose. We all have something to contribute to the world, right? It's just a matter of really seeking it out and just being true to ourselves and say, God, where do you want me to be? How can I be a benefit to somebody else? It's not like, what can you give me? What can I do? What can you do? But what can I do that's going to be able to benefit somebody? And God builds that out in us. I'm a firm believer in that.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። አሁን እየተከታተላችሁ ያላችሁት በኦገስት 18 በኤምፓወር ዘ ኮሚኒቲ ዊኬንድ ላይ ተዘጋጅቶ የነበረውን ቢዝነስ ሊደርስ ስፒክ የሚለውን ፓነል ነው። በዚህ ፓነል ዲስከሽን ላይ ኢትዮጵያ ሀብተ ማርያም፣ ሉሊት እጅጉና ማይክል አንደብርሃን ናቸው ዲስከስ የሚያደርጉት እንዴት በኮርፖሬት ስትራክቸር ውስጥ እንዴት ማደግ እንደምንችል ወደ ሊደርሺፕ ወደ ሃየር ፖዚሽን ለመግባት ራሳችንን ለማሳደግ ምን ነገር ማድረግ አለብን የሚለውን ቆይታ እየቀጠልን ነው። ተከታተሉት።
What advice would you give to a younger you? So Ethiopia looking back, let's say 15 years, okay? For that Ethiopia, what advice would you give her? It might be 20 years back.
Just don't be afraid. Fear is not real. You can conquer fear. You can conquer fear. It's not real. Just not be afraid. I look back on pictures of my younger self, and I look at things that I've done, and I'm like, wow, you were pretty bold, you were pretty fearless. And I think fear is the one thing that can hold people back or have people questioning who they are, if they can do it, etc. You have to do whatever to combat that thought or those negative thoughts that can get in your head. Just fear isn't real. Be resilient, fight it, go after whatever it is you want, because you can have it if you're willing to put in the work.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great advice, right? Yeah.
Thanks.
Michael, what would you advise the younger you?
I think Ethiopia hit it on the head. Don't be afraid, but also don't be afraid to ask. You know, I've had people, juniors in college, you know, reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, can I just have a 10-minute conversation, learn about what you do? You know, can you be a mentor to me? And if I was at that age, I remember not asking those questions. I thought I have to do it on my own, and what I realized is if I had asked those questions earlier, I probably would not have made some of the same mistakes that I've made now. And so asking those questions, and you know, if it's people like us, we're more than happy to have those, because at my, you know, when I was at that stage, there were very few people that looked like me that could serve that. So just ask those questions and don't be afraid of failure, because, you know, without failure, you won't succeed.
That's true.
I would say to my younger self, and really just anyone, I think in any walk of life, the time is now. I think that, like Ethiopia said, I think the fear holds us back and say, okay, you have to do this first. You have to accomplish this first. And you'll find that there's a lot of steps you could have just skipped. And I think that when I look at, you know, number of different kids, when I go to conferences and I recruit, oh, they were so much more prepared than I was. They studied harder, and advice I give them is just like, the time is now, like live, figure it out, find your purpose, like don't miss this moment. And, you know, I think as far as like, you know, advice to really take away, you know, Nelson says like sometimes it's the generation that decides whether they want to be great. And I think that right now we are in a very, very important moment in history, you know. If you guys haven't seen Black Panther, how many people have seen Black Panther? Okay, great. How many people haven't seen it, but you're still saying Wakanda forever? Okay. But I think we are literally, our country, like where we come from, our people, like we are in like a real-time opportunity to like really live real life Wakanda. And I think that we need to open our eyes, think about loving other people and helping other people, and never think that you're accomplished too much or you've accomplished too little. Really just holding each other, taking each other forward and supporting one another, and stop looking at other people to do it, but really get involved and understand that the time is now. And so I think that that's what I would say.
That's great. That's all wonderful, wonderful conversation. I think before we end, I want to ask Ethiopia, because you are in the music business. Many of us Ethiopians are not in that industry whatsoever. There's a lot more coming up. So I want us to encourage, like if you have to say something to encourage people to be in that industry, because, you know, we got the science covered. We have all the physicians and the nurses and all of that. But, you know, that's a unique industry in the art space. What advice would you give young people to be interested in the industry that you're in, and what avenues can they take? It's not just singing, right? They could be writers. They could be so many things.
Absolutely. Okay. There's so many different careers that exist in entertainment or even in sports. I think for anyone that has a passion in any of those areas, to learn about the different careers that exist behind the scenes, because there's so many in different areas that would allow you to work alongside the thing that you're most passionate about, and then use that other muscle you may have, whether it's in business, etc. So I definitely encourage that. I've come across a lot of young Ethiopian and Eritrean kids that are now, you know, entrepreneurs, managers, having success with a lot of acts in the music business, and I absolutely love it. Like, I get so excited. I've had people working for me that, you know, were in A&R or in marketing, et cetera, that, I mean, especially in Los Angeles, there are a lot of us there. In the younger community, they're definitely aggressive and about it. And in Atlanta as well, you know, understand business, but also understand that you can work in the space that you love. You might be the best basketball player, but you're not going to make it to the NBA, but you can find a way to work with the NBA players and teach them and educate them, and, you know, work alongside something you're passionate about. So I think it's really important to do the work, to do the research in the area that you might love. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Michael and Lulita, I want to ask the finance industry, especially in Wall Street, where you are, for young and up and coming Ethiopian and Eritrean Americans, what advice would you give if they are interested in getting into the finance industry, but they're kind of maybe nervous about, gosh, this is too competitive. Will we be able to handle it? What would you say?
I think just start slow. I mean, I know very few people that go directly from college to Wall Street. That's a very difficult path, but build up to what you want to do. And then again, I think those opportunities are there. They're there for us. It's just a matter of seeking them out. So for finance, it's not like you have to be great at math. I mean, there's very little math involved in the day-to-day. It's really, are you passionate about markets, learning about different economies? That's really what it is. And don't feel like you have to have a good math background or a science background. It's really, if you're passionate about something, then you'll get to it.
Excellent. Lulit?
Yeah, I would mirror what Michael said, because I'm definitely not good in math. But I do think that, just being able to understand that really even finance today is even becoming more and more blended with technology. So like if you guys really on your day-to-day, how much and how often do you pick up your phone? Okay, where am I going to eat today? How do I get to this place? We are in a very important time where technology is really making decisions for us on where we go, what we buy, etc. And I was at this one diversity conference where they said, having diversity in technology is really important. Like, look at when we Google unprofessional hair, what do we see? And it's black individuals with curly hair. And so it's like when you don't have, all communities represented in financial and technology, before you know it, like everything is going to be done from a background of some algorithm that you don't understand. And so we really need to push our communities to be involved and make sure that there's clear representation. And honestly, it's not that hard. It really isn't. I started my career in collections. Anyone can pick up the phone and talk to somebody, right? And so I think that really being able to get outside of your head, connect with individuals here and other places and just kind of empower yourself to kind of go out there and learn and just try.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This has been an enlightening conversation. I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for listening.